Hello YouTube, my name is Nathaniel and you're watching Gente. On this episode we're talking to writer Ron Stallworth about his book Black Klansman. Please enjoy. In 1971 you just got out of high school, and in 1972 you became a part of the cadet program. How did that manifest?
Well, I left El Paso in August 72, went to Colorado Springs, relocated to Colorado Springs, and the cadet program was a program within the police department for high school graduates between 17 and 19 years of age who aspired to be police officers. And you took the same tests as police candidates. You had to pass with the same score because basically you were officers in training. And you were paid, if you got hired, you were paid $5.25 an hour to start. That's when minimum wage was $1.60 an hour.
That's 3.5 times.
Basically. And you had to wear a funky brown uniform, had a badge that said cadet on it.
Was it made out of, was it like a metal badge or was it?
It was a regular badge just like the police officers, except yours says cadet, theirs said patrolman. And you performed civilian support functions within the department. For example, I worked in the Identification and Records Bureau, processing records, criminal history records, and taking fingerprints. I also later worked parking enforcement. I was a meter maid, and there were other jobs within the department that they assigned you. And you went to the police academy at the same time. And once you turned 21, they gave you your leather with your guns and bullets and all of that stuff, and you started your field training officer program.
So when you got fitted for your uniform, I think you wrote a great story in your book about just the walls that you had to go through just to be recognized as an officer at the same level. Would you mind telling me the story?
Yeah, I reported. Actually, this occurred when I was a cadet. I reported to the property requisition officer. He was a lieutenant, and he was responsible for equipment requisition. And I went to get my hat for my cadet uniform, a brown hat. The same kind of hat that police officers wore, except brown. Theirs was blue, ours was brown. And he measured my head. I had a small afro. Got to keep in mind, we're talking 1972 when I was a cadet. And he measured my head, and he pressed the tape, measuring tape, down as far as it could go on my head, thus rendering a false size, about a size and a half to be exact. And he gave me a hat, told me to try it on. I tried, it wouldn't fit, told him it wouldn't fit. He laughed and said, "Go get your hair cut." And he was very amused by it and walked off.
How long did it take you to get, a response from someone else to help you with this?
Well, I decided not to fight him. I took the hat, put it on my head, and then I walked around town going to lunch with this too small hat sitting on the very top of my afro. And I'd get honked at and waved at and yelled at, people pointing their fingers and laughing, and I would wave at them and smile and whatnot. Made a game out of it until about, I don't know, a few weeks, maybe a month. I was coming back from one of my lunchtime excursions, and I ran into the chief of police. And he looked at me and says, "Why is your hat on your head like that?" And I told him. It was about a size and a half too small. The lieutenant in charge of requisition would not give me one that fit my afro-sized, styled head. And he told me, "You go tell him that I said to give you a hat that fits your head, and it's a direct order." I said, "Yes, sir." Went to the lieutenant, told him what the chief said, and naturally he wasn't happy, but he gave me the hat that fit. And I was in his doghouse from that point on.
So I feel like that's your character. You're very patient, even though you know you're right. and I feel like your patience always pays off. Once you were an officer, you always made a joke with the other officers about making you a narc. And you carried this joke on for a long time, I would assume. How long was it?
From the time I got hired at the age of 19 until I turned 21.
You told him to make you a narc?
Every time I would see the sergeant in charge of narcotics, I would yell out to him, "Make me a narc," and he laughed at me.
So, I'm sorry. Continue.
He laughed at me, but it was in jest, not poking fun at me, but in jest, because at the age of 19, you can't do any police work till you're 21 and fully fledged officer. So I still had 2 years to go, but already I'm trying to get in the narcotics division, and I started. You have to understand the dynamics of that time. I was hired to integrate the department at the age of 19. They had no blacks within the department at that point. So I was hired to integrate the department. And they had never had a black detective. So I was basically breaking new ground in 2 areas, or trying to. And I wanted to work undercover. Narcotics was our undercover function in the department. And so I was asking him to make me a narc. And he would laugh and say, "You're not old enough." On my 21st birthday, after I got sworn in as a patrolman, the mayor said I do. I said I do back to him. He gave me my certificate of commission, and I marched right over to the sergeant's office and said, "I'm legal now. Make me a narc." He laughed again. He said, "Now you got to put in 2 years in uniform before we'll even consider making you a narc." I said, "Okay." So I put on the uniform and went about doing the job. But every time I saw him, I said, "Make me a narc."
So with that being said, do you think they made you a detective with their own, they had their own agenda with making you a detective? Or do you think that they made you a detective because you're the most deserved?
No, it didn't work that way in the Colorado Springs Police Department. There was no test that you took in order to become a detective. In a lot of departments, you have to test for it. It's a rank within and of itself. In Colorado Springs Police Department, a detective was an assignment, just like any other assignment you got. And you were assigned to the detective division in whatever special area of focus they may have determined. In this case, I wanted to get into narcotics. It wasn't that I had some special skill or anything. The reality is they needed a black presence in the narcotics division because the white officers couldn't penetrate the black community of Colorado Springs.
Can you give me an instance?
Well, the people just didn't trust them. White officers would go and try to buy various drugs from known drug dealers in the black community. They'd see a white face and get out of here. Wouldn't even talk to them.
So they needed you to be able to be to not be seen as officers. You weren't the.
No, they needed a black face. Whites just couldn't do it. And that is, I knew this. It was common knowledge. I knew it. And that's how I ended up in the narcotics division, was trying to penetrate the black community and being willing to do that. A lot of black officers did not want, well, a lot of blacks, period, did not want to be cops, much less work in a specialized area like that where they'd have to focus on people within their own community. Me, I didn't give a damn. If you're selling drugs, you needed to get off the street. I didn't care whether you were black, white, or whatever. You needed to get off the street, and if I could get in that position to where I could take people out, I was willing to do it. And ultimately, my campaign, if you will, of Make Me a Narc paid off.
Catch those vibes for me. 60 miles, swerving to the next party. Invitation, only for local ties. I got the rest of my night and I got the least rest of my life. Random text from the exchange. Why you still hitting up